Hi, folks. We're going to talk about another attribute that God needs in your life so that he can actually increase the trust that he puts upon your life. This one tonight is a hard one, actually. It's a hard one to maintain and to live through. We want to talk about discipline of our egos. And that's why we have this great picture behind us.
It's a great picture.
Stanley Cup, Mark Messier, 1990, raising the cup, the other guys around, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was our heady years, eh, Brent?
It's a little painful to think about how long it's been, but yeah.
Yeah, it's called ancient history.
Yeah.
Anyway, that hopefully that changes someday, and we see them hoist the cup again.
Yep.
But you know, when success comes to people, you learn more about people sometimes in success.
That's right.
You find out kind of about how their ego or how they view the world. What's their biggest filter? Is it them? What else is it? Is it God?
Yep.
And in Daniel, we find the situation where here's this guy. He's been taken prisoner of war, but he's not working in the field. He's put into this elite program that's connected to the king of the world table. Mm-hmm. He is in the most opportune place he could possibly be.
Yeah, these guys are being treated, I would imagine, pretty darn good.
Royally.
Yeah.
He's literally moved from the streets of Jerusalem to the table of the king of the world. And we can't understand how big a thing this was because obviously it's not our world right now.
Yep.
But the idea of just going to the top place in the world and you're in the elite of the elite program.
Yep.
And that's where he's put. Well, guess what's going to be challenged, you would think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The ego. And success does that, right?
Yeah, you probably heard the saying, oh, so-and-so let success go to their head or whatever. That's exactly what can happen. If you're not prepared in advance, like Daniel was, he had his mind already set. I'm not going to be number one here. God's going to be number one. And if he hadn't made that decision preemptively, then, man, it really could have gone the other way for him.
We see this in sports a lot, where you get the top draft pick, they get the big contract, and then 2 years later, their life's wrecked.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
They didn't have the internal compass set right.
And
right?
And then, of course, the media has to expose it for the whole world to see, and it's just a real mess often.
The 15-year-old boy, though, 15-year-old young man, Daniel, did handle it.
He did.
And he handled it really, really well because he says, I'm turning down the king's table if it's going to cost me my faith.
Yeah.
And so he's doing something that you put me onto a website that I've watched some great videos off of, and it's entitled
IamSecond.com. And it's great. It's if you have the opportunity, check it out. But it's basically a lot of successful people that have had success in their business or their athletes or some movie stars, celebrities, whatever. And it's basically their story or a snippet of their story. And they all come throughout their story, ups and downs, they all come to this realization that God has to be number one. God is the one who has given me this anyways, and he's got to be number one. And that's why it's called I Am Second. So
it's always amazed me how in our culture, and I think this is not just our culture, but we elevate people, like, for instance, in the entertainment industry that stand before a green screen.
Yes.
Okay. Or athletes, right? And we elevate them to such a degree they become sort of our pantheon, the gods of our culture.
Yep.
And so on. And you got these men and women walking into these professions, and they're treated like that.
Yep.
So is it ever refreshing when you see some, like it is on that website, where they have got it, I am second.
Yep. Exactly.
God is first.
Exactly. And their stories are all unique to them. There's ups and downs, as I mentioned. And some of them really did have to learn the hard way through this. The success really did get to them. The ego wasn't disciplined. And but like with all of us as human beings, God's so patient and gracious that he allowed them to sort of go through that and them to learn the hard way, but to learn and understand that, okay, ego has to be second here.
It does. This is a discipline you bring to yourself. And they took pain the right way.
Yes.
And that's
exactly.
really important to do in life, because, you're going to have your success stories too. And you can start thinking you're first and acting like you're first. And that is not something God can build greater trust upon. The original sin goes before, the creation of this earth. And you've got Lucifer in heaven, who decides he is going to have his throne ascend above God's throne, and so he can be the center of worship.
Yeah.
And this is the core of sin since that time, where we become godlike, our own.
Yeah, we're going to be the shot callers. And I find that interesting because God is, one of the names for him is the Most High. Well, how do you put yourself above the Most High? but we try.
It's amazing what our egos can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the part of life that's going to take a constant awareness and discipline, because your ego's constantly wanting to rise to the occasion and be first.
Yes.
And that's where you have to take a look and say, no, you're second. Daniel did this really well.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And so he walked into a very tempting situation, and the cost could have been huge for him.
Yeah, I bet most of the guys in this program were probably sort of climbing on top of one another, trying to be that number one spot.
And he gets there because he chooses second.
That's right.
And this is where the Lord is. So, can we say, Jesus said this, if you want to be great in my kingdom, become the servant of all. He's saying, become second. Yeah. And that's where, when we recognize God's math on this, we find that our lives don't crash, and he can bring great challenges and successes, because the life sustains it in turning that all back in praise, thanksgiving, worship, and greater effort.
Yeah.
As we go through life.
And then he knows that he can trust you and trust you with more. And I think a big part of this, and in Daniel's case, is there's something about him that other people were attracted to. Well, obviously this was it. It was that he was second, his ego was in check. But it's attractive when men and women live their lives that way. Whereas if ego is number one, if I'm going to be number one, and what I want is going to be number one, there's something kind of, it's almost like repelling. Like
you know what? It's hard to like somebody who their first love is themselves.
Yeah.
And we're not attracted to people like that. But on the other hand, in the same way that we would devalue them because of their ego, when you run with that kind of ego where you're first, you devalue others.
Yep. Yeah, you're willing to kind of throw anyone under the bus to get what you want.
They have less value than me, so however marginally I may treat them, it is not with, as Jesus said, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
That's right.
And so, if you want influence and value in life, you got to understand in people's eyes that comes because you are second, because you discipline your ego, because you become a servant of all in those respects.
Yeah, and that usually means you're going to have to pass up on some things that you would be tempted to want or to gain. But man, it's so worth it.
And that is what Daniel did. So consider those thoughts tonight with each other, or if you're on your own, meditate it out. How hard a time do I have being second? What part of my ego needs to really be disciplined? Look at your successes or where you think you're the strongest. Maybe your ego's showing up where somebody's trying to push you for change, and you've got your backup, and you don't think you need it. There's all kinds of ways this game gets played out. But if you'll figure that out and become second, that's where the magic is. Yep. And that's where God can say, you know what it is to be second, and you're getting comfortable with that. I can give you bigger trust. Bless you.